I want a large room, about 200 square feet. Emma exclaims, her enthusiasm met with a grumble from her stepbrother. While I was unpacking, catching the interaction between the two out of the corner of my eye, he called out to me in a teasing tone. "Hey, no complaining even if you're not happy. Remember, it's divorce if you oppose me." They're over the moon about their new house, oblivious to its secrets. Seeing their joy, I can't help but feel pity and decide to reveal the truth. My name is Mia Smith. I'm a 35-year-old illustrator. I have a twin sister. Her name is Charlotte. She, like me, is also an illustrator but also works as a manga artist. I work as an illustrator, and in the gaps between I also take on another job. While the other job might technically be my main profession, my passion lies in illustration, so I often refer to that as my primary occupation. My twin sister Charlotte and I are identical in every way, from our faces to our figures. We're so alike that even our parents struggle to tell us apart. It was to the point where they'd get confused and frustrated. A perfect example of how identical we were. In the past, we used to exploit this similarity for pranks. We'd switch places for tests or trick adults by making them guess who was who. This lifestyle changed when our father scolded us severely. He reminded us that we were born to support each other, not to cause trouble. So we stopped doing things that would bother people. Seeing the sad faces of our father and mother at that time made us realize that we were truly doing something wrong. Since then, we've never used our identical appearance to hurt anyone. It's a sign that we've grown up. I'm single, while Charlotte is married. I'm cautious when it comes to seeing men as romantic prospects, but Charlotte has always been more inclined towards love. She has often been deceived by the wrong guys, turning to me for comfort. However, her current husband is a great guy and understands her personality and career and cares deeply for our family. His name is Jack Johnson. They met through a friend and Charlotte fell for his sincerity and kindness. Jack has a daughter, Emma, from his previous marriage, and he had to take her in after his ex-wife pushed her onto him. Initially, this made me feel uneasy. How do you feel about saying she was pushed onto you? Emma is your precious daughter, isn't she? You're right. She's more important to me than my own life. But Emma is a girl, and with my job requiring frequent travel, the house often ends up empty. Being a man, I thought she'd be better off with her mother. Back then, I wasn't confident about raising her on my own. As my brother-in-law spoke of his complex circumstances, his face contorted with emotion. I apologized. I had hurt him by speaking subjectively without fully understanding his family situation. I also apologized to Charlotte. I regretted asking unpleasant questions after she introduced me to her husband. However, they both forgave my rudeness. It's natural for you to be worried, Mia. You're concerned that Charlotte's husband might not be treating Emma right, especially since Charlotte is such a kind-hearted person. You must have been worried she might fall for the wrong guy. She must have had her concerns too, but she never asked for details, probably not wanting to trouble him. Hearing our conversation today must have reassured you a bit, right? At first, I was worried just like you, Mia. But seeing Jack with Emma, all my worries disappeared. I know better than anyone how much he cares for her. Their laughter and happiness made me realize my meddling was unnecessary. They will be fine. They're strong together and can overcome anything. While I'm happy Charlotte found someone she can rely on, I can't help feeling a bit lonely. Charlotte, who used to come to me for everything saying, big sister, is no longer here. I feel like my role as an elder sister is over, leaving me with a sense of emptiness. But seeing Charlotte happy is what matters most to me. Feeling this sincerely, I implored him, please take good care of Charlotte. In response, he promised I will cherish her for life. We then chatted about casual things. Jack shared more about Emma and the circumstances of his divorce. His job kept him so busy that he couldn't be involved in household chores or childcare. Jack said that the inability to spend quality time together as a couple led to strains in their marriage, ultimately resulting in divorce. As I climbed the career ladder, I became more work-oriented, putting a lot of burden on my wife. He confessed, acknowledging that it was understandable why she left him. But when the conversation shifted to Emma, his face lit up with a father's pride. She might be a bit of a mischief maker, but she's essentially an honest, lovable child. I think you, Mia, would get along well with her." Saying this, my brother-in-law showed his doting parent side, which made me smile involuntarily. Seeing Jack's devotion to his family reassured me that he would take good care of Charlotte. If Charlotte is happy, that's all that matters to me. From then on, I decided not to interfere in their lives unnecessarily. That was until the day Charlotte came. Charlotte came to me in tears. It was a day of heavy rain, so intense that the weather forecast had issued a flood warning. I wasn't expecting any visitors and was leisurely working at home when suddenly the doorbell rang. It wasn't a delivery, nor had our parents mentioned visiting. If it were Charlotte, she would have called in advance. Wondering who it could be on such a day, I cautiously checked the intercom and saw Charlotte, drenched in the rain. It was the first time that Charlotte, who usually contacts me in advance, had visited my house without any prior notice. I hurried to the door, and as soon as I opened it, Charlotte threw her arms around me. "Charlotte, what's wrong? You're soaking wet." I was confused by her sudden emotional outburst in the entrance of my apartment. Living in an apartment complex, this was the entrance area. Understandably, loud crying could potentially disturb the neighbors. To start, I invited a drenched Charlotte into my apartment, fetched a bath towel from the bathroom, and told her to wipe her face and body dry. "First, let's dry your hair. I'll also make you something warm to drink." It had been ages since Charlotte had come to me like this, crying for help. This scene, so familiar from our childhood, had become rare over the years. Usually when Charlotte was this distraught, it meant she was in a tough spot. Charlotte, who's not good at leaning on others, only seeks help when she's reached her limit. Was something wrong at home? While these worries grew in my heart, I first prepared to warm her up. After getting the bath ready and making sure she was warmed up, I called her out. She obediently followed me. She seemed more relaxed after the bath, returning to the living room where I placed a warm cup of coffee in front of her. "What happened? For you to come to my place without any notice, it must be something serious, right?" I gently asked Charlotte, who was calming down while sipping her coffee. At my words, tears welled up in her eyes again, but she held them back as she explained, "Actually, Jack has been acting strange lately." Charlotte spoke with such seriousness, and upon closer inspection, her face appeared worn and exhausted. Since moving in with Jack, Charlotte had been juggling housework and her job. Emma was still a high school student and required a lot of attention. Charlotte works from home and told me she was left with almost all the household responsibilities. I knew I'd be taking care of the house because of his previous marriage, but he's been pushing all the housework onto me, and it's getting harder to manage my work. Charlotte, who had never raised a child before, seemed to be having quite busy days. She was handling daily lunch preparations, washing sports uniforms and getting school materials ready, but she initially tried to cope, thinking it was part of being a wife. However, the household chores asked by Jack and Emma kept increasing. At first, it was really just the typical household chores any wife would do. But gradually, it turned into preparing things for Jack's work, getting Emma ready for school, and it even escalated to running errands, giving massages, and being ordered around to fetch things. Both started to look down on her for working from home, with Jack even resorting to emotional abuse, saying, "I'm the one providing for you." Charlotte was told that as long as she didn't contribute financially, she had to obey Jack and Emma unconditionally. If Charlotte defied him, it would mean immediate divorce. This way, they controlled her, pushing her into a corner. Emma seemed nice at first, but when Jack started treating her like this, she began to see her more like a servant. Charlotte described how Emma would complain about even minor things forgotten in her school preparation, and continuously criticize the food. The only time she felt appreciated was in the first few days after their marriage. Overwhelmed by the unfairness, Charlotte asked Emma to do some things for herself, only to be met with cold stares and scolding. "Charlotte, you're just sitting at home with your remote work, right? I'm giving you tasks to do, yet how can you look so stressed? Dad's much busier and has it tougher. How can you even show a tired face? It's unbelievable. Aren't you being provided for by Dad? That night, Emma reported this to Jack, and Charlotte faced his wrath. Since then, she never dared to ask Emma to do anything, fearing that Jack would find out and mentally corner her further. Charlotte endured in silence. Our job as illustrators depends a lot on our mental state. Whether I can work effectively or not is greatly influenced by my mental state. When I'm mentally drained, there are times I can't draw anything for even a week. She confessed to me in tears that the constant scolding and fear had made her afraid to even pick up her brush. Unable to create satisfactory work, she felt she was letting her clients down. Since then, Charlotte had been enduring a life she feared would become unbearable. She continued to make lunches for Emma, which she didn't even want to make, and took care of Jack's work preparations, all the while trying to avoid any sort of conflict. She shared how she spent her days always on edge, trying not to anger Emma or Jack. But instead of gratitude, they began criticizing her work, adding to her misery. Why is the lunchbox filled with just frozen food? I tell everyone at school that I make my own lunch. Charlotte, you need to help keep up this act. If they find out it's frozen food, I'll be embarrassed at school. Emma will be the odd one out. This dress shirt's collar is stretched. Can't you even iron properly? The previous wife would have done this perfectly. The Jack and Emma I knew before the marriage seemed like entirely different people. I had thought Emma was such a kind and sweet girl until she and Charlotte got together. But now the reality was starkly different. It was almost like a fraud, and I could have my shock at the story. What should I do? I'm scared to be with them. I don't want to go back to that house. Charlotte clung to me, crying. I felt a surge of anger. It was unforgivable. Treating my dear sister this way, using her as a punching bag for stress relief, I just couldn't stand it. I gently hugged Charlotte, stroking her hair to comfort her. It's okay. I will definitely help you. I was determined to pull her away from Jack and protect her from those demons. But how? I pondered over how I could be of any help to Charlotte. That's when my eyes fell on an elementary school album. It reminded me of the time when we were scolded by Dad for mischief right before our graduation, with photos of our pranks included. An idea struck me, and I proposed something unexpected to Charlotte. Remember the switcheroo we used to do in elementary school? Yeah, but why? Let's do it. You and I will switch places for a month. I'll live in that house as you, and you go to our parents' house, explain everything and convince them. You want to end things with him, right? Are you serious? If Jack and Emma find out we've switched, who knows what they'll do to you? I'll be okay. There's no way they'll find out. But to do this, Charlotte, you need to be prepared. This will most likely lead to a divorce. Are you ready for that? Do you have the resolve to leave him? I advised Charlotte to think about herself for once. It was a sudden plan. She needed time to sort her feelings and asked for some time to think and left. Even after returning home, Charlotte's life continued to be like a hellish slavery, and it seemed her anger had reached its limit. She later contacted me wanting to go ahead with our plan. Since I had a major event in a month, the timing seemed perfect, so we decided to execute the plan. I'll take care of the rest. We swapped the essentials while Jack and Emma were out, and Charlotte went back to our parents' house. I proceeded to cancel my apartment lease, ready to start the switcheroo. Within a month, I planned to gather evidence to favor Charlotte in the divorce and show those two a piece of hell. They had hurt my dear sister, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. That night, the first incident happened. What the hell is this with the bath? Jack bellowed as I was having dinner with Emma. Jack always takes a shower as soon as he gets back from work. He used to instruct to have the shower running before he arrived home to warm up the bathroom. What? Leave the shower running? Isn't that a waste of water? His dissatisfaction with just a minor bath preparation mistake was beyond my comprehension. Are you stupid? It's obvious that you should start the shower right before I get home to warm up the bathroom. How many times do I have to say I want a shower immediately when I get back? You're useless. His words were harsher than I expected. Just for a small mistake in preparing the bath, Charlotte had been enduring such harsh treatment. And what did he mean by that exactly? I had no idea when he would be home. While thinking this, I forced a smile and simply replied, "I'm sorry. What's with you today?" "You're creeping me out," Emma remarked, suspicious of my demeanor. "Huh? You usually get scared and can't do anything when Dad yells at you." "What's with that smile?" "It's really creepy." The crucial difference between Charlotte and me was apparent. Charlotte dislikes being scolded or seeing conflicts, being a peace lover. On the contrary, I have a fiery temperament and don't hesitate to confront, even with men. I enjoy watching wrestling and cheering during soccer games. I've also dabbled in mixed martial arts. I couldn't comprehend being intimidated by a man like Jack, but Charlotte must have been trembling at even a slight reprimand. To convincingly impersonate her, I realized I needed to act more frightened. Hastily, I masked my confusion with a troubled smile and distractedly began to clear the dishes. "It's nothing. Maybe you're just imagining things, Emma." I realized that I needed to pretend to be frightened, even if I didn't feel it, as Emma is surprisingly observant. Jack seemed rather dim, so I might get through a month with him, but Emma could prove to be a challenge. I had Charlotte detail her daily routine, thoroughly simulating to become her. The more I learned, the more evident it became that Charlotte lived like a servant. She woke up at 5 a.m. to prepare lunches and send them off. She squeezed in work during any free time and hardly had any time for herself. Charlotte did all the shopping, and it was unthinkable for Jack or Emma to do any household chores. She meticulously checked Emma's belongings, finding and preparing everything she needed for school. Since Emma always wants to shower first, Charlotte had to finish cleaning the bath and have it ready before Emma returned. Emma seems to be particular about cleanliness. Charlotte is very particular about cleanliness, and is apparently very fussy when it comes to cleaning. The slightest bit of dust could lead to her yelling and complaining all day long. Jack would reprimand Charlotte if his beer wasn't chilled. And since their food preferences and meal times differed, she had to prepare separate meals. The one time she served a shared meal, both berated her. This lifestyle was unbearable for me. I would have left within 3 days, but Charlotte endured it for a year. Why did she stay? It was because of our parents. Jack really takes care of our parents. He comes home with me every weekend when he's not on business trips, and even wants to help them move into a nursing home, since their health isn't great. I know our parents are grateful, so I thought if I just endured, no one else would get hurt. Jack, earning over $200,000, knew Charlotte cared for our aging parents in a cramped apartment. He offered to look after them in exchange for her compliance. Charlotte is kind. Given the situation, Charlotte couldn't refuse Jack's conditions, and he seemed to know this. Seeing how happy our parents are, I couldn't say anything. I couldn't admit I was suffering. Jack's method, akin to holding our parents hostage, revolted me. He knew Charlotte's character and exploited it, treating her like a puppet. I had always wondered why Jack could be so harsh with Charlotte and why Emma treated her like a servant. But now, understanding their dynamics, it was clear that the kind-hearted Charlotte couldn't possibly stand up to them. Everything made sense, and knowing the truth, I was shaking with anger. I will never forgive them. "What?" I muttered to myself, to which Charlotte, on the other end of the phone, gasped in surprise. "Don't worry, Charlotte. I won't let those demons, who took advantage of your kindness, get away with this. Rest assured, I won't let you suffer any longer." I declared this as if to convince myself, determined to endure this hellish month for Charlotte. Driven by the sole desire to help Charlotte, I endured the harassment from Jack and Emma, and though I was physically and mentally exhausted from the anger, I somehow held on, looking forward to the big event that was scheduled for a month later. And finally, the awaited month passed. I never expected Charlotte would buy a house like this. The clueless pair didn't seem to notice my sarcastic tone as they marveled at the new, fully built house we were in. I wanted to surprise them as a thank you for everything they do. Despite my initial doubts, I was grateful for their help and support. They had signed the contract for this house before canceling their previous one, and naturally they hadn't consulted me at all, which initially infuriated them. "What do you mean you signed the contract without asking me, the head of the family?" Jack exclaimed. "Where did you get the money for this?" If they had known we were building a new house, they would have wanted to be involved in the layout planning. I won't forgive you if it's not stylish, Emma added. Although they were initially furious about me acting independently, as soon as they saw the layout and the projected image of the house, their eyes lit up with excitement. Wow, Charlotte, you have good taste, Jack said. A backyard and a bathroom with a skylight to see the stars. That's so chic and amazing. The location wasn't bad either, and it would shorten their commute to work. It was purely coincidental, not done for them. But if they wanted to misunderstand, it worked in my favor. I'm impressive, aren't I? I boasted with a sniff, feeling proud as I began the remaining work. They must have been shocked that Charlotte had such a significant amount of money. Jack, believing he had the financial upper hand, never bothered about her finances. He even told her to earn her own way for anything she needed, looking down on her income. They must have been astounded that a woman they underestimated had such wealth. I could easily guess they might start plotting to get their hands on it. But I wouldn't let that happen. This was the end of their hellish treatment of Charlotte. Hiding my joy at finally being able to free Charlotte, I struggled to contain my elation. Meanwhile, Jack and Emma excitedly discussed room assignments. I want a large room, about 200 square feet, Emma said. Ah, Emma, that's not fair. I wanted that room too, Jack protested. As I chuckled at them, they looked at me as if wondering what was going on. What's so funny all of a sudden? Emma asked. You're weird. Charlotte probably thinks it's strange for you to have that room, Dad, Jack added. You just don't suit it, that's why she laughed, right? Nonsense, I replied. Charlotte is my wife, she wouldn't dare defy me. Remember, it's divorce if you do. Watching them laugh carelessly, I let out a loud laugh myself. You two, what exactly are you misunderstanding here? I asked. Huh? This is my house, not yours. What are you talking about? Jack asked, confused. Have you finally lost your mind? I'm perfectly sane and not broken at all, I replied. I just don't understand why you two think you're living in this house. Why wouldn't we? Emma asked. I'm the husband and Emma is the daughter. It's only natural for us to live together. Huh, Jack said, realization dawning on him. I'm single. Who exactly have you been mistaking me for all this time? At that moment, they looked at each other, completely baffled by the situation. Just then, a car pulled up in front of the house, and out stepped Charlotte and our parents. Sis, congratulations on your new house. We've heard everything from Charlotte. Hello, Jack and Emma. That's Charlotte over there. This is Mia, isn't it? What is everyone talking about? Jack and Emma were completely perplexed, their faces a picture of comical confusion. They looked around at everyone, sweat beading on their foreheads. Our parents and Charlotte stared at them with cold, stern gazes, their eyes full of disapproval. I'm surprised Jack can't even recognize his own wife. No eye for women, huh? At that moment, I let my hair down and removed my glasses. I had been in disguise to make it less noticeable, but Charlotte and I had switched places. Standing next to Charlotte, I revealed a smug smile and disclosed everything that had happened to date. I'm Mia, and this is Charlotte. The person you've been living with this past month was me. Surprise! What? Jack exclaimed in shock. Emma, on the other hand, was still trying to comprehend the situation, standing there, with her mouth agape. This house was built with my money for me and our parents. Charlotte consulted me a month ago about the issues with you two. That's when I proposed this switcheroo plan. They looked utterly ridiculous, and I couldn't help but smirk. Finally, I could speak my mind. There couldn't be a more satisfying moment than this. Jack, unlike the timid Charlotte, was clearly uncomfortable around me, a woman who is more assertive. He lacked the confidence to verbally spar with me, and he was intimidated by my background in martial arts. Now realizing who he had been dealing with, he visibly recoiled in fear. He was physically recoiling, distancing himself from me. Really, you two have been doing as you please for this whole month, haven't you? I'm the type who pays back what's been done to me. Are you prepared for that? Jack, who had always underestimated me, was now trembling in fear, clearly aware that he was no match for me. Contrasting Jack's fright, Emma, still not fully grasping the situation, began to snap back. Wait, why did you switch places without telling us? Isn't that illegal entry? It's no problem since I had Charlotte's permission. That house was under her contract after all. Jack and Emma had moved into Charlotte's place because it was more convenient for commuting and better suited for their needs than their own house. Can you not say such terrible things about illegal entry? The landlord gave permission. But how can you not discuss such important matters with your family? Do you even care that you're married to Dad? Exactly. You've invaded our privacy? Influenced by Emma's defiant attitude, Jack, though still fearful of me, tried to argue back. I fixed a sharp gaze on him and took out my phone to show them a video. If you're talking about invasion of privacy, what about all the human rights violations you've committed against me? I showed them footage secretly recorded by a hidden camera, capturing their numerous misdeeds. This included recordings of verbal abuse and even instances where they threw objects at me, barely missing. Realizing they were in a disadvantaged situation, they panicked. What? You've been secretly recording us? That's a crime. Don't be ridiculous. Charlotte set up these cameras for security in her own house. It's not illegal. But making such decisions without consulting us, how is that acceptable as a human being? You're one to talk about ethics. Hearing my brother-in-law's words, my anger exploded, and I raised my voice in a shout so fierce that it silenced both of them. After all the harassment you've put Charlotte through, how dare you speak so self-righteously? And Jack, you approached Charlotte only for our parents' inheritance, didn't you? The next video showed Jack and Emma smirking and talking when they thought I wasn't around. When are you going to divorce that woman? I wanted a younger, more beautiful mom. We have no choice. She's worthless, but her parents own that valuable land. I've checked with a real estate friend. Just selling that parking lot will bring in a huge sum. Their target was our parents' inheritance. A property passed down from our grandparents, which our parents had managed and lived on. The inheritance from our parents came from our grandparents and had managed and lived in that property with care. However, since the house didn't have any accessibility features, it became hard for them to keep living there. So they moved to a smaller apartment that was more suitable for just the two of them. I heard they're now renting out the house to a friend. To think there was such a deceitful intention behind that help, my parents were outraged upon learning the truth. When they heard about the plan, they insisted on coming with Charlotte to confront them. We've been grateful for your help, but to think you had such motives, we were underestimated. Fortunately, we never used the money you sent us. My father, coldly confronting Jack, placed a large bag in front of them. This contains all the money you've sent us, he said. Jack was shocked to see the money he had sent over time. We've lived without touching that money, planning to return it upon our passing, as arranged with our lawyer friend, my father continued. They were mindful of their uncertain health in the future, considering their healthy lifespan. They had implored a lawyer acquaintance to take custody of their wills, updating them annually. How dare you treat our daughter this way? We'll never forgive you for hurting Charlotte. Jack and Emma, intimidated and cornered by us, desperately looked for an escape. But there was none, and my mother, standing firmly at the door, blocked their way. Where do you think you're going now? If you're thinking of going back to your house, it's pointless. We've already left your belongings outside, and Charlotte has canceled the lease. There's no going back. What? You threw our stuff out. Hearing this, Jack and Emma pushed my mother aside from the entrance and rushed out the front door. They were dumbstruck by the sight of boxes piled up outside. This is our family home. Why would we let outsiders' belongings inside? Unpacking your stuff was really helpful. Of course, it doesn't compare to the torture you've put us through this month. Thanks for playing right into our plan, I added sarcastically as Emma looked on, her face twisted in frustration. Realizing they had been completely outmaneuvered, they collapsed to the ground, frantically begging Charlotte for help. Charlotte, please. Help us. We have nowhere to go. If we have to sleep outside in this freezing winter, we might die. It was January, the heart of winter in Alaska, where everything was buried in a silver world of snow. Sleeping outside was akin to willingly risking one's life. However, I was indifferent to their plight. Why don't you build a snow hut and try to survive the cold? While I taunted them with sarcastic remarks, they glared back as if to silence me. Their desperate situation seemed almost comical to me. Emma and Jack, realizing arguing with me was futile, turned to Charlotte, begging at her feet with tears in their eyes. Charlotte kept her face down, not looking at them, and refrained from speaking. She's inherently kind-hearted, unlike me. I worried if she had begun to sympathize with them or was having second thoughts. As I was consumed by a fleeting moment of doubt, I was just about to ask her what was wrong. Charlotte raised her head, broke free from their grasp, and confronted them with stern words. I want nothing to do with people like you anymore. We're getting a divorce. I've recorded everything, including the way you've treated me, and I'll be sure to claim a substantial alimony. She was usually compliant, so her unexpected defiance left Jack and Emma speechless, surprised by her sudden strength. This was the first time she'd ever spoken back so harshly. Breathless with excitement, Charlotte seemed to surprise even herself. I couldn't help but laugh, feeling proud of her growth. Well said, Charlotte. Be prepared, you two. I won't forgive you for what you've done to my family. There's no apology that can make up for it. My words crushed their last bit of resistance, leaving them in tears and in a state of shock. Thus, Charlotte was successfully freed from Jack and his daughter. They tried to reach out to Charlotte for help, but my father turned them away at the door, and a lawyer we hired swiftly initiated the divorce process. Thanks to the excellent lawyer, the divorce and alimony claims were handled efficiently. Afterwards, Jack and Emma were left without a place in the community. In a small town like ours, news travels fast and their bad reputation spread quickly. Their negative reputation had spread throughout the neighborhood, and I heard from Charlotte that Emma was now infamous at school, labeled as a troublemaker, making it impossible for her to continue living in our town. Having successfully severed ties with them, we are now living happily and peacefully. Charlotte moved in with us and is thriving as a successful comic artist.